Hey, welcome to the Gig Show. I am your host, Jim Dorman, and this is my co-host, Dan Cody. Dan Cody?
Hey, Jim. How are you?
He always says, hey, Jim. Good, thanks. How you doing?
Good. We haven't done this in a while.
Not too
Stormin'
long.
Jim Dorman.
Oh, Stormin' and Dangerous Dan Cody.
Dynamic duo.
Wow. Hey, congratulations on your new song just out on Dan Cody Music. Yeah. Life, It's What You Make It.
Yeah, life, parentheses, it's what you make it.
Yeah, it's
came out last Tuesday.
Yeah, that's cool. Get it out there. You know, folks should check that out. Going to Dan Cody Music, all the music platforms. It's cool stuff. You're doing a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I love it, and just kind of takes a while sometimes to get it where I can feel I can put it out there. But this is a fun one, and got Dogmatics on drums. Dogmatics from Fairport Convention.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he's a fantastic, incredible drummer, and he's played with everybody under the sun. Yeah. So it's a big thrill to have him on.
That's awesome. But I want to take you back, though. I know we got I think an anniversary this year with one of your first band from when not your first band, but when you were like in your 20s.
Yeah. 20s.
Finger Lickin' Blue, which I remember going to see you guys at different places. You guys were young whippersnappers. I was a little bit older, but how many years has that been?
It's 30 this year.
30 years. So who was in that band?
Dave DeLuca was in the band. Right. Gary Ticini, Dennis Barry, and then Gary left, and my cousin Brian Hester came in and on lead guitar, and then another buddy of ours, Brian Sullivan, came in to replace him on lead guitar. So,
but originally kind of a quartet, yes?
Yeah. Two guitars, bass, and drums, and
you were the bass man usually, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So now you guys are in your 20s, right?
Yeah.
How long did that band stay together?
20s. We were probably active for about a good, say, almost 10 years, 8 years.
In the 90s, yes?
Yeah.
In the 90s,
Playing all over the South Shore. Some North Shore gigs, Boston, obviously, but we were pretty active. It was a good mix of some originals, covers, some blues, It was a good mix.
All right, so just you and me here now. You guys were all young and probably working too and stuff like that. But did you ever live together? Anybody roommates or anything? How much time did you spend together?
Yeah, Dave and I lived with Dave and his family for a few years, so we had a lot of fun.
Did you get in any trouble together or any of that stuff?
We didn't get into crazy trouble. But we had a lot of fun stories.
A lot of fun stories?
Gig stories and some crazy times.
Is that
nothing that put us in jail?
No. Okay, well that's good because today we're going to have a great guest. We got filmmaker Rudy Childs on today, who is the filmmaker documentarian of the Dogmatics. You may see the sign here for the documentary.
Yeah, that's right.
So let me give you some little background, because it's all about this band, the Dogmatics, which were back in the 80s. You were just a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, I remember. I knew the name.
Right.
I remember from way back, and I was just getting, when they were really, I think, rolling.
Right.
And I was just getting into really starting to jam with people and play with first bands, jam sessions.
Right.
So it's just getting that experience of playing with other people, and they were starting to really kind of crank.
So you kind of knew of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to say that when I was in the 80s, we weren't doing the either punk or garage type thing. So I was kind of I kind of heard some of the stuff. I knew some of the bands around them. I used to listen to WBCN that played some of that stuff, but like FNX, it wasn't quite what I got into. But I definitely knew some of the bands like that. Well, if people aren't aware. Back in the 80s, it was a punk pop garage band out of Dorchester called the Dogmatics. And they had some success in Boston and even beyond. The band featured twin brothers Peter and Paul O'Halloran on guitar and bass. And my former junior high classmate, which I figured that out afterwards, even I was like, the Dogmatics, that sounds familiar. Jerry Lahane on guitar and lead vocals. Tommy Long on drums. And they were a lot of people's favorites because they had fun and feisty songs like Gimme the Shakes, Teenager on Drugs. And it sure doesn't feel like Christmas. Tragically, though, Paul Halloran died in a motorcycle accident in 1986. which ended their early run. But they are back with either brothers Jimmy or Johnny O'Halloran on bass and James Young on mandolin and vocals. They record on Rumbar Records and are playing gigs again, including a recent gig at the New World Tavern down in Plymouth,
Nice.
which I think went pretty well. So now that we're acquainted with the Dogmatics, our guest today is filmed and produced about a documentary about them, which is now available to watch on the Roku channel. Okay, so this is our guest, Rudy Childs. He's an award-winning documentary filmmaker, producer from Rockland, Mass., a rock photographer whose work has appeared in numerous publications, a producer of boxing programming, married father of 4, incorporating vintage footage from the 80s. His 4 full-length documentaries on heavy metal music: Heavy Metal Picnic, Tension, 25 Years Underground, 1984, Riding It to Hell, 1985, Indestructible, have won world acclaim. Another 21 Years, a folded flag about the cathartic plight of a son discovering who his dad was after his hero father died in the Vietnam War, is now widely screened within the veterans community. Rudy's extensive photography portfolio of seminal rock bands like Van Halen, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, and Ozzy Osbourne in their primes have been incorporated into many coffee table books chronicling their careers, including shots from epic concerts like Pink Floyd's The Wall and the US Festival from 1983. So it's a mouthful, but one more bit. Rudy's latest venture, directing and editing the feature The Dogmatics, a documentary from 2023 that chronicles the band who helped birth the Boston punk scene in the early 80s. His friendship with the Dogs dates back to 1973, and over the years, he has filmed them as they began as a fledgling garage band, to hosting them as a national touring act when they played DC's iconic 930 Club. Rudy always wanted to tell their story, and now he has.
It's great.
Yeah. So in a few minutes, we'll bring Rudy out and talk about all that good stuff. A lot of connections. But for right now, just to take a look at the documentary. Let's take a look at the trailer from the Dogmatics, a documentary.
We drop in the Dogmatics in the understated elegance of their Thayer Street hideaway, soon subject to urban renewal.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Dogmatics!
The Dogmatics, a documentary, is a story of a band of Catholic school hooligans who just happen to have played a role in influencing a thriving Boston music scene, then and now. The Dogmatics were established in 1981. Paul O'Halloran got together with his identical twin brother Peter to form a new band.
Then I remember they told me, like, we're moving to this loft in Boston. We're going to start a band with Jerry. That's interesting that there's going to be a band with twins in it. I wonder if that's ever happened before.
Because when we started living at the loft, we became aware of the existence of cockroaches, right? So I think Jerry in particular didn't like them, and that's what that song is about.
They were Boston's house band, to me.
So that's a fun song, you know. It also gives you the opportunity as a guitar player, when it goes down to just drums and bass, to walk over to your amplifier and take a swig off a beer. Me and Pete would often do that together, look at each other, raise a beer and take a swig.
The Dogmatics were no different than any other talentless, self-deprecating, beer-swilling, girl-chasing lunkheads with guitars. They were young, selfless, and affable. Playing was the only thing that mattered.
I later became a middle school teacher, and, you know, nothing can train you better to, you know, run a middle school classroom in New York City than having worked with Dogmatics for 3 or 4 years.
it's a living organism. It's not just like super well rehearsed and then go thanks and split. It's like, you never know, you might see a fist fight. This could be good. I'm gonna watch.
They just have that thing about they're Boston. There's never been a more Boston band than the Dogmatics.
They're not an 80s act, they're not a revivalist act, they're not a reunion, they're not an oldies act, they are a band, a current band.
The Dogmatics might very well be the most emblematic Boston band of this half century that too few people know about.
All right, well, welcome back to the Gig Show. Hope you enjoyed that trailer of the Dogmatics, a documentary, and now we welcome our guest, filmmaker, Rudy Childs.
Hi, how you doing? Glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, welcome to the Gig Show, and congratulations on such a fine documentary.
Thank you. We had a good run with it in the film festivals.
Yeah, give us a little background, like how you know the band and how this documentary came about.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Maryland, and when I was 11 years old, my family moved to Massachusetts, and I lived in Rockland. And during that time, I would visit Kingston with a friend of mine who had a cottage down there. And when we got there, there were these two twins, or there was a set of twins, Peter and Paul. And at first, we were just kids throwing rocks at each other. And then sooner or later, we became friends and, doing what teenage boys do and, smoking cigarettes in the woods and chasing girls. But they were our friends, and then we would go to the North River over there at Route 3 and jump off the bridge and at high tide into the water, and just doing kind of fun things like during the summer. And they were my friends, and then I ended up moving away in '79. I was 18 years old. I was upset that Boston had banned Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
So I ended up going to California, and then after hitchhiking across the country, I ended up in Maryland, and I got a job for the railroad through my grandfather, and he wanted me to cool my jets down, no more running around the country. So I was like, okay. So I started working on the railroad, and I would regularly visit my family in Massachusetts on the train and catch up with the guys from the Dogmatics. Cool. Well, they hadn't formed the Dogmatics until like 81. And then when I found out about it, it was a big event for us to come up to Boston, or for me to come up there and go into Boston and see them and visit them at their street, and then go to the Rat or go to the Channel and Jumpin' Jack Flash. I saw them all over town. That was just one of the things I wanted to do when I came to Boston, was go see my friends that now had a band and an album and a big song.
Nice.
So.
And then when you first met them, were they already playing guitar and instruments?
No,
or
we were still kids. Yeah, we really didn't have the interest in music yet, except for like listening to pop radio.
Right.
But the thing was, it was really kind of different, was that I being in Maryland, I was got involved with heavy metal music, and up here in Boston, it was punk.
Correct.
And garage punk. And back then, the genres didn't crisscross. You didn't go to a reggae show, or if you were into a certain type of music, you went to that club. You didn't go to other people's clubs. And for me to come up to Boston and go see punk, garage punk, it was like, I wouldn't go back home and brag to my friends.
Right. Yeah.
It was different back then.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I was in different circles, although we're the same age, and the guys in the band are the same age, born in '60, probably class of '78.
Yes, that's exactly it.
That kind of thing. So there's so much I see in the documentary that I feel so familiar with, of the times and the people and the faces, and in fact. To your question about were the guys into the music yet. I mean, I knew Jerry in like junior high, just as one of the kids. You know, he came from Dorchester and all of a sudden showed up and was in class or at school, just doing all the same things that we were doing. And great guy, he was cute. The girls liked him, that kind of thing. But I don't. And I was into music, but and not really playing any much, maybe a little guitar. But I don't remember anything specifically about knowing like that Jerry was any musician or anything like that. You know, that he's a lead singer and rhythm guitar player, I guess, in the band, and I just kind of floored me. I think I kind of remember one of our friends who also got in some bands, Charlie Murphy, saying, "Hey, remember Jerry? He's in a band in Boston. They're doing pretty well." I kind of remember that, and I was like, "Really?" I was like, I remember like playing baseball with him and stuff. But
that's
anyway,
the power of music. All of a sudden you go from 0 to 100, and you pick up a guitar or a bass or set of sticks, and you get together with a couple people, and bam, you make a sound, and it's
curious.
incredible.
When did you start music?
I started on drums when I was probably about 5 or 6. And then guitar about 8 or 9. So
okay.
I started young, very young.
Yeah, so that's where I believe we get punk music is because they start so later in life.
Right.
Someone like yourself who's got a lot more years experience,
And
these guys were picking up the instruments just to pick up girls.
Yeah, well, I mean, that seemed to be a good motivating factor in, some of their songs. And I think the, Drinking by the Pool and Teenage Girls and, some of the things that they're really fun songs.
Yeah, they were just singing about what life was for them growing up.
Right.
And they were characters because it was always something would be clunky or happening. And, that video, Drinking by the Pool. Right. I mean, I don't know if the deal was I got a hold of the footage like a couple of years ago, and it was shot in 1986. And who sets up all that electronic equipment by the pool?
Very close, and then jumping in the pool,
and drinking and pushing each other in the pool, and it was just. Yeah, and I found this footage, and I'm like, oh my God. It was like one of those moments like, I've got footage of them drinking by the pool. So I put together that edit, and that has gotten a lot of views on YouTube, is the Drinking by the Pool one.
I think the whole thing is an achievement. I'm putting all these things together in a way that, really flows and is really poignant at times. Just the way you handled Paul's passing, and that I wasn't really sure watching about it. We were seeing all these different O'Hallorans and everything. I didn't realize I hadn't seen,
an interview with Paul.
Yes, and then all of a sudden that tone changed when Peter was talking about being a twin,
right?
And it was just so such a beautiful story and transition. You could hear the emotion in his voice, even though he was kind of laughing about the funny parts of it. And then to have his mom.
Yeah.
So anyway, we
just lost her just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh no! Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So I was just together with all the guys and celebrating her life, and she was a wonderful woman. They had 10 kids. I mean,
10. Wow. That's okay. That's I was wondering because you hear about some of these like Dorchester.
And I'll tell you that the loss of that one son, Paul, weighs on them so heavy, even to this day. All these years later, from 1986, it's like if you just mention it, their heart just sinks, and it's just, I guess you lose someone at that prime point in their life. But I've actually heard Peter, how he thought of it and mentioned it, and I wish I really captured him saying it on video, because I would have put it in the doc. But he says, I think about Paul, and that he didn't have to go through the later stages of life where you're getting old and responsible and paying loans and bills and raising kids and all that. And sometimes that's a schlep. And he was basically had all the fun in life, where they were very carefree and worried about the band and, where you're going to get your next beer or whatever, and just having fun. And so he got that part of life, and he didn't have to go through the daily dredge.
Yeah.
And I was like listening to, and I think that Peter says that just to alleviate some of the weight.
Sure.
Off him, because you lose an identical twin. Oh my, I couldn't think of what that would be like. You know, that was someone that you were almost like married to because they were just together.
Right.
And then it's gone.
Yeah. And
suddenly at a young age. So that was tough. You mentioned something about the editing and trying to put that together, and where do you explain this in the documentary? And I put the documentary together in, we started in 2019. So of course, you know, almost 6 or 8 months into it, we're getting hit with the pandemic. And now whatever I had was whatever I had to work with to start with. And I edited it, and then I'd re-edit it, and then I'd re-edit it and re-edit it. And we really set a plot to try to, like, when does this kind of get revealed? We're not trying to hide it. We're not trying to, it's just like, where's the place to get it in there that this happens, and how do we get out of it? Because it's a very sad moment, and then you don't want to just send your audience home, you know, crying in tears.
Correct.
You want to kind of
on a high note.
So we managed to use, we purposely looked at stories that were told about him, like the one twin running into the mirror across the room because he thought his twin was there. And that's the humor that brings us to that point. And then there's humor afterwards because Paul wrote a great song called Christmas Time. Sure Don't Feel Like It. And it's a sad song, but he was told by his mother to go out and, chop off some of the Christmas trees so it would fit in the house, because sometimes they come too tall.
Yeah.
Well, Paul went out there and lopped the top of the tree off so it would fit in the house. His mother comes over, what are you doing? So that was the humor that got us out of the very sad part. Right. Not to leave them forgotten, but just to kind of get the audience in a more upbeat. So there was a lot of plotting, and I had worked with the niece of the twins, Jada, and we would go over the stuff, and it was a lot of work to get it refined.
I went back to watch it again, you know, because again it caught me off guard the first time, and I think that was good. It was good the way that worked, because it was like, wait, you know, you got all this build up of what's going on with the band and all these things, and a lot was that 1986. It seemed like that was a good year. Like they'd gone on tour. They were out in Montana.
Second album,
second album. Things are going, and then it kind of reminds me of like Dwayne Allman. You know, I mean, they just done at Fillmore East, and were just getting things going, and he died, and it was like this just so final. You know, that's that. You know, but
there's a big void.
Yeah, but I also I liked the interview with TK Tom Keenan.
Keenan,
and is not in the band, but a good,
Oh yeah, he was instrumental in the whole thing. I mean, he was. When you look at who lived at the loft, you had 4 Dogmatics back then, and Tommy wasn't living at the loft. He lived with his family, and he's kind of a quieter guy, and as you can see by some of his interviews, and he so the other person that lived at the loft, the 4 people, was Tommy, TK. And so even though the drummer would be there a lot, he had refuge away from that nonsense. Yeah. And he was that kind of guy that needed that space. Well, away from craziness. Other people can just.
I would have been that guy too. Actually, I think I did do the house with the 4 bedrooms, and you never knew who was going to show up when, or the whole thing. That's just crazy. The loft situation. It's hard, it very well described, I think. But again, they had motorcycles inside.
Yeah, and we had the video. Yeah. This shows up later down the line because we're interviewing people. And they're talking about this stuff happening. One of them was Blowfish, and he was very detailed. And he's like, there is footage somewhere of it. And then eventually it did show up. and we transferred it, and I went, oh my gosh, here's the guy doing a donut around the guy with the microphone. He was his smoke going up, and you know, and then he like loses control and smashes into a wall. It's like just okay. Everything was kind of okay, and then I liked there's a couple stories that got edited out, but you know, like Peter was coming home one day, and you know, the loft windows he could see up there, and right below Jerry's area where he was, there was a big pile there, you know, of something. And he goes over and looks at it closer. It's their new album. It just came out, and Jerry's girlfriend had thrown it all out the window because she got into a fight with Jerry. And there's a big pile of their album.
I've just seen the reaction to throw the stuff out, you know, the girlfriend.
So
that's our new album.
Yeah, I think he was riding around his motorcycle. He goes, "What's that big pile of crap?" You know, he goes, "Oh my gosh, that's our new album," and tossed out the window. So yeah, they always had kind of some fun stuff, but that was one of the stories that got edited out, and I'm trying to think of the other one. There were so many stories you wanted to put in there, but I had a time limit of 1 hour and 30 minutes, and that was all I was going to do.
Yeah, were the interviews that didn't get in there and things like that, or just,
there was a couple interviews. One of the first interviews we did, I'm trying to think of his name. He was a writer too. But then it got down to where we couldn't get anybody to get an interview because of the pandemic. You couldn't go out.
Do anything.
And I hate to put a timeline on the thing, but I was like, got to a point where it was like, I had to finish this doc by a certain time because my equipment was starting to fail. My Mac was like 11 years old, and I was using an old software, and it was glitchy. You would have to, you know, 40 times keep hitting the button until it finally accepted something, and it was just I'm like, this isn't going to last long because you couldn't put the new version of the software on the old Mac, and the old Mac needed to be upgraded, so you needed to spend, you know, another $10,000, and I was operating with old software. It was a nightmare. So I got it off, and sure enough, that I don't think more than a month later, that when I turned on that computer, it just came up with that white screen where the operating system wouldn't operate anymore.
Yeah, the white screen of death.
Yeah, so I had gotten the documentary off, and then, you know, it was preserved.
That was a relief.
Yes, it was a close call. I was really sweating it out there for a while. I'm like, this thing's not going to last, not going to last.
Now, did you have a lot of the video footage, or did you get it from other sources, or?
Yeah, I had recorded the dogs in 1985 when they came to Washington, D.C. I was living there and outside Maryland, and they actually all stayed at my house when they came down, along with Julie, their manager, and I filmed that the
930?
The 930 Club. Yeah. And then from there we found it was really tough. I'll tell you what I did. I went to the film festival in Boston, the independent Boston Film Festival, and I made up cards that said Dogmatics and my number and looking for footage, and I walked through the crowds wrapped around the Somerville. When they were releasing the BCN movie at the Somerville Theater, I walked around through that line that went almost a mile long, and I was like holding up this card, and I'd give it anything you have on the Dogmatics. But
it's a great idea.
Hey, Rudy, I love all the guests on that you had, the interviewees, I guess, the different people. How did you did you plan all that out, or just kind of come along as you were?
We actually had a very, very long list of people we wanted to interview.
Yeah.
And because of producing something in the pandemic, we did not get nearly the people we wanted to.
Okay.
And there was a lot of people that were disappointed, but again, I was telling you about how the Mac was coming to the end of its life, and there was all my work, and an enormous amount of work on there.
Right.
So I got it off, and we just went with it.
Right.
And with some of the stories we had to cut out, it was tough already. I mean, to try to figure out how you were going to add more people, and so many people had great stories. So I guess I was fortunate because I didn't have to make the decision of whether this person's not going to make it or that person, because the pandemic made that decision for me.
Yeah, right.
We're not going to get to you, because it's not going to happen. And we tried. Yeah. We tried. There was just a bunch of people that we would reach out to and try to recontact and just, when can we do it? And they just couldn't get out.
Yeah. And you mentioned that 90 minutes. I think a lot of the best documentaries and great music films are short. There's certainly long ones that are volumes and volumes. You can watch 8 hours, but when you really have a good story, a great story, in a concise time, it's something you can come back and watch over and over.
Yeah.
Versus, that was great, but it was 3 hours, and I'm just kind of
that's true.
Exhausted.
That is good.
It's like songwriting. You got to really stick to that edit.
Oh yeah.
I could have songs go for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But when you're really trying to get the essence of what you're doing across in a time that's palatable.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time amount for this.
I do want to mention one thing.
Sure.
The very first film festival that we got into was Berkeley Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our very first award was for editing.
Okay.
And it was, it was great. But then I kept thinking about what that meant. And it's just like what you were saying, Dan. It's just, you have to edit, and you have to be conscious of how much time this documentary is. You don't want people at 9:35 looking at their watch while they're watching a documentary. You want to make sure that it has that flow and they're still engaged in the movie.
And I think rather than really even talking about it specifically, it just came through of like how much the guys in the band and the other people care about each other, I think, or like each other, and then still today, which may not be like a lot of other bands or some of even favorite bands, but I just to see them all together, like at Jerry's house, and discuss that. You could, I don't know, just it seemed to me like, hey, these guys still enjoy getting together.
Yeah.
And again, the other people that were around them, seemed to really just have a great love for the music and the whole thing. Great memories of those times and the times, the current times too.
Yeah, there's a part in the video where Blowfish says that the band was a young, scrappy band that played in local dives, and 40 years later they're an old, scrappy band that plays local. And it's so true, because I was interviewing them one time, and for some reason Peter said something to Jerry, and I had both of them on camera at the same time, and it turned into a real heated argument. I thought these guys were going to get up and fight. And I'm like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable about this. I'm like, let me get my mics on, pinned off. I didn't know what to do. But they got serious with each other.
All right.
And but that's the kind of relationship they had. They've had to fight it out before,
Okay.
And I would hear these stories about how one was driving, the van, the other guy would just wham, hit him in the head, and next thing it was like swerving the car.
All right. So maybe
band dynamics.
Yeah, they have everything.
I didn't hear that come through, but I could see that too. Definitely with the
So,
anybody I knew, there was definitely that too. When they go, remember that time we almost came to blows, or whatever. But also another cool thing from the documentary that came through. What's his name again? The
Blowfish.
Paul Blowfish. I don't know if it was him that said it, but it was like the whole was greater than the sum of the parts.
Oh no, that was Ed Reamer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's got something about that. That's and you can testify to this. It's about chemistry in a band. It's like when things gel, and I love what you were saying about songwriting, because I'm a big music person and I love music, And when I hear a song that's so well written, and I always try to figure out how they did it. And sometimes it's conflict in a band and stress. You know, this guy wants it this way, this guy wants it that way. And you see what happened with Fleetwood Mac and their Rumors album. And it was stress of relationships, and they're writing about relationships, and it really comes through. And then you've got the Dogmatics had that kind of chemistry. Not that they were in relationships, but they had with each other, but they were having like fights with girlfriends, and they were, you know, having fun at the pool. And so those kind of things just came out in their music. And it was really weird because Jerry went on for years playing in other bands with other great musicians, the Matt Weeds, and stuff that should have just been as recognizable as the Dogmatics, but it wasn't. And it wasn't because it wasn't good. It's just there was just some sort of chemistry in that band that made it different than everything else. And he even at one point he said to me, he goes, "That's it. It's just there's some sort of chemistry that's happening there." And you know, we look at it now in 2019. Did that chemistry disappear? Well, they reformed, but they were very careful about trying to replace Paul as in bass, so they brought in Johnny, his younger brother. I do want to say one thing about the doc, and I wish I had incorporated somehow. There's a picture of Johnny and Paul, and they had written the song MTV OD together, but I didn't indicate that he was only 7 years old when he wrote the song with his older brother. So Johnny ends up becoming a very accomplished musician. He's the first one that actually replaces Paul. And plays instead of Paul, I should say, not replace him. You can't replace him. So he played with the band, and they would do benefits and things like that. And he eventually moves to Arizona. Johnny does. And the older brother, Jimmy, now steps in. And again, you still have the O'Halloran tie-in. And so now you got Jimmy in there. And it works. You know, there's a chemistry still. I think that they've the newer material dropped that needle. Hey, how do you write a song like Drop the Needle? You spend a lot of time trying to figure out how do you put this lightning in this bottle. You know, one day it shows up, it's there, and you try your entire career trying to put that lightning in a bottle. But not that it's, you know, explosive and international or anything like that, but it's a very good song.
It's a good song.
A lot of people recognize that as dogmatic music, and it is. You know, I believe that they still have enough chemistry in them. I mean, they're not the young boys they were when they were recording the first two albums and carefree in life about things. I mean, they've all raised families, and things are changed, and their songwriting certainly has changed too. But I believe they still got that element about them. Hey, and this song here too, I forgot to mention this. Automatic Klitschkoff.
Oh yeah,
one that Peter wrote, and talk about you making it with a song. This particular song got onto Sirius XM.
Okay.
Into the rotation on the Fusion Punk station, and the band got written a check. Right. And Spotify, when they send you a check, it's for 12 cents or something
pennies.
like that. Pennies, and this was in the thousands.
Wow, good for them.
So it sometimes you hit one.
Yeah.
And this was one of the songs that was successful in the newer era for the Dogmatics. And so now we got a release coming up for the new album.
Okay.
So in this one we're going to put vinyl out, and finally, and I say we because whether I like it or not, I'm managing the Dogmatics. I mean, you got Jerry's their leader; he's the decision maker. But behind the scenes, it's like the Godfather 3. I try to get out there, keep drawing me back in.
Exactly.
So,
is there a release date at this time? Or
we've got July 26th is Saturday, and I think it's in. It's going to be a big event. It's the record release party will be in Waltham at the French American Club, or American French Club, and they're going to have like 10 bands playing.
Nice.
And so, you know, Jerry's going through, I'll be handling the tickets, I'll probably manage the door that night, I'll do, my wife runs the merch. So, like I said, that's kind of what the management entails is you know, whether you want to get out or not. I'd rather go out and watch the band and have a good time, pay my $20 or whatever, but I'm going to be stuck at a door. And I guess that's what a manager does. So,
have the Dogmatics played at Rudy's Garage?
Oh, yeah.
I'm lucky enough to get invited to a post-Christmas party where you had to dress up like a dead rock star.
Yeah.
At Rudy's. And he has a garage that people have seen pictures and they're asking me, what club is that?
Yeah.
To see the band. And now there were two bands. You had two bands in the party. I didn't know this before I went there. You had Duke Blues, right?
Yeah.
Duke Blues.
Blues
I don't know if you ever run into Duke Blues around, but he plays drums, and great guitar player.
Greg Miller. Yeah.
Greg Miller, who's been with a few other bands, I think, around.
Yeah, he was in Soulbox, I think it was.
A lot of Stevie Ray Vaughan type licks, other stuff, and then the Irish.
Yeah, the Hired Men.
The Hired Men?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay.
So years ago, once the kids started getting a little older, and we were raising kids in my family's house, and we moved back up here in 2004. I moved back here. My wife's from Maryland, and we had 4 kids. So eventually, somewhere down the line, we decided we'd have a Christmas party, and you know, our kids were still young, and we played albums and stuff like that, and we had a good crowd. And then somewhere down the line, Peter says to me, he goes, you need us to play there. And this is before the Dogmatics reunited. And so he brought his Hired Men in there, and it was Jimmy on stand-up bass, it was Peter O'Halloran on guitar and vocals, and Johnny Coe, who's great, long beard. He's got that thick Irish accent. So good. He knows all the Irish tunes, and great singer. He's a great musician. Love Johnny. And then we had I think Michael on drums. Anyways, they came out and they played, and James Young was on the mandolin, and everyone loved it. It was just so much fun. All of a sudden, it just changed the complexion of the party. And this was just a couple years into us having parties. And next thing you know, we're like, I think around 2018, we were trying to get Jerry to come out and join the guys, because then we'd have like a Dogmatics unofficial. And so I was bragging, and then somehow Jerry ended up coming down with shingles that year, and he couldn't play. I mean, he had his guitar over there and everything, because he dropped it off, and yeah, so that didn't work out. But then the next year, we finally got it worked out where the Hired Men would play, and they try to play all night long. And it's cold. It's in December, and there's fire pits, and there's it's just a good time. And then there
was a dramatic moment when I was there. All of a sudden, they put the door down. Everybody get inside. We're putting the door down.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
and the dancing, went
like a lock-in.
Yeah. Well, what happened was every now and then we try to open the door. Yeah. And, because there's so many people out in the driveway, they want to see. Yeah. And if you try to pack everyone into the garage, it gets a little tight, and, with the dancing and all that. So, yeah, we shut the door. Yeah. And we used to smoke cigars in there. And one time I remember we had to open the door because it was so smoky with the cigar. And I thought the fire department was going to come down because the smoke started billowing out of the place. I'm like, oh my God.
But
when we opened the door.
It's funny. Sorry to interrupt, but having watched the documentary now and getting a little more familiar with the Dogmatics and everything, and having been there and watched Peter, and have some pictures and stuff like that, I almost feel like, that guy's like famous. Yeah. Anyway, just
we actually got a couple other bands that now my wife has got talking to, and they're going to play this year is Stop Calling Me Frank and the Why Nots.
Okay.
And so along with the Dogmatics, so we're going to squeeze like 3 bands in there, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So this party is right after Christmas. I heard you actually you really like Christmas, right?
Oh yeah.
You like really get into character over
Yeah, I
Christmas
do. I get real
sometimes.
busy in December, and Abington is like second home for me.
Yeah.
I just I do a lot of stuff with the.
Some people might think you look familiar.
Yeah, I guess they would.
You might think you look like Will Ferrell or
a little bit.
Or what's that
Yeah,
drummer from the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Oh, Chad Smith.
Chad Smith.
Yeah. I like to put on a green outfit and join the parade.
And join the parade, right?
In Abington and at the St. Patrick's Day parade.
You like to ride a bike occasionally?
Oh yeah, ride my bike through there and say hello to all the kids.
Say hello to
what
everyone.
their favorite color is. Somehow that just it started with the kids. They were young, and my brother had bought the costume for Elf, and he gave it to me after Halloween one year, and I put it on, and it worked. And so I would do it sparingly during Halloween with my kids, and then they encouraged me to do some more. More. Go to the stroll or go to this, and I'm like, okay, so just like on a dare to my kids, I would do it, and I really got into it. I enjoyed doing it, and next thing you know, this thing's exploded. I've found a busy time of year is December for me now.
A man of many talents.
The restaurant here, right across from where we're at,
Giordano.
Giardino's. Yeah, and they have me there every weekend. Now Anita Marie's in Rockland wants to have me there in Christmas time. I actually went to the Pentagon this past December and got paid very handsomely to go. Well, at first I did a volunteer thing. I went down there for Toys for Tots. And then they go, well, come back we need to do a party, an office party. And I'm like, okay, well, this is the same the same organization that pays $500 for a hammer and $1,500 for a toilet seat.
All right.
So Buddy the Elf kind of fit in there between $500 and $1,500. So I flew down there and I performed for him and cashed a check.
That's awesome. It's so cool. The way we met, actually, is that I was dressed up for Oktoberfest in German garb. I was actually working there. And I just said, the heck, I'll get into the spirit of things, and our producer Matt Lyons was interviewing me about just my experience there, and I happened to mention this. This has been great, the Abington Celebrates thing. Maybe I should go to the Christmas events, and he's about 20 yards behind me, and he goes, I love Christmas. and it was just funny because I didn't even see him, but he's Buddy the Elf behind me. I love Christmas. And then, I don't know, we just started talking, and I don't know, we somehow very quickly got into music and how you, and we started talking about the Outlaws, or Henry Paul, and you mentioned how you were...
I knew them, and I loved their music.
Yeah.
I knew who they were.
And you photographed them at the Cape Cod Coliseum. And in fact, the concert that I had been to, they opened up for the Allman Brothers, go figure. My very first Allman Brothers concert of many to come. Anyway, so but you were a rock and roll photographer back then.
Yes. I do want to say one thing before we get into the rock and roll is that although I charged the Pentagon a lot of money, a lot of my Buddy the Elf stuff is volunteer. I do a lot of senior citizens and disabled people and do a lot of dancing and visiting and stuff like that. That's mostly what I do.
Good.
It's just like when someone wants to use me commercially, I have to.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So that's keeps me very busy. But anyways, you were talking about the old rock concert photography. In '78, when I graduated high school, I went to the Cape Cod Coliseum and I took a little Instamatic camera. And that's where I started taking pictures of rock concerts. And it got enormous. I just had this bug in me that I had to go to more concerts, and I felt like I'd missed great things.
Yeah.
And
I wanted
to document it all. And so the first one was in '78. It was in July. It was Blue Oyster Cult and Cheap Trick. And then it just, every weekend after that, I was there.
Wow.
And I had my camera, and I took pictures. And then eventually I got out of the Instamatic camera and I got into a 35 millimeter, and you know, it was kind of a hack, but I was just seemed to be in the right place at the right time.
Wow.
You know, I wasn't like one of those guys where, you know, you set the aperture and you get depth of field. It was just a matter of getting in the sweaty crowd, unfogging the lens, getting
a shot.
and getting that shot without, you know, getting sprayed with water or someone's elbow hitting you in the head or security trying to take your camera. So that's what I was contending with. Wasn't so much about the, you know, purification of photography, you know, where someone's wanting to use black and white, and I'm just like, whatever film was available is what I was using, you know. So.
And when you connected with, when the Dogmatics started playing and you reconnected, would come up to see them, were you doing
Oh yeah, I had photographs, and they it was 83, and I was this particular one night I went in there and I got hammered, and I just want to let you know I've been sober since 1987, but back then I was a young kid and I was drinking a lot of beer.
Yeah.
And so we got there, and I'm taking, and of course I had the camera on the wrong setting, so when I took the flash pictures, it was like only lighting up half the frame of photographs of the Dogmatics, and I just messed everything all up. And so I kept the negatives, and just recently I went back and I took this picture of Paul, and through a computer program I was able to lighten the dark stuff and darken the light stuff and balance it out, and all of a sudden I put this picture up on the internet, and I mean, people were like, "Oh my God, where did you get this photograph?" And it's like, it took, you know, 40 years to finally get the capability of unscrewing up something I screwed up when I was 22 years old. So,
oh wow.
But yeah, so I took a lot of photographs back then, and some of them I would get it right from the very first start. I don't know, it's just blind luck or something.
And this would be fun for folks at home watching. You know, talking about the Dogmatics and how vibrant the music scene was back then. Had so many clubs, so many places you could go to see music, and it's just completely changed today. But you mentioned the 930 Club, the Rat, Square,
and the Channel.
The Channel. I mean, these are incredible places.
Yeah, and you know, I always looked at it like, in 20 years, they're going to look back at this era and say, this was the era of great concerts. And, you know, it's just, it's a generational thing, I think. I think that because it's gone and it was something we got to experience, that we think it's the greatest thing in the next generation. And I used to do that when I did a lot of boxing, because you would do, older people would think Ali and Foreman, and then the newer people would think it was Hagler and or the guy up here in Hanover, what was his name? They just unveiled a statue for him in Brockton.
Rocky Marciano?
Yeah, well, no, they did that one. They got their second one. The one who fought Sugar Ray.
Marvin Hagler.
Hagler, yeah.
Marvin Hagler.
Well, anyways, they had... Got to brush up.
We used to watch all those fights back in the 80s.
But we always think that was our era. Yeah. It was the greatest boxing. And then if you ever watch Cinderella Man, you'll see that there was a great era of boxing back then. So the clubs are great.
The clubs were gritty.
Oh yeah,
as was their music
and sticky.
And their style
are very sticky.
To your point, when you're in that scene and you're having some turmoil and differences and arguments in the music, it all comes together in that environment.
Yeah.
If you're playing a beautiful hotel ballroom, it just doesn't have the feeling that playing the Rat.
Although I did like the ballroom. Hey, there's so many things that you've been involved in, and I just want to make sure we get time to throw in a shout out to the Riff Raff and rock and roll
radio
and your book.
Yeah.
So maybe you could just tell us about that quickly. Just so maybe we'll have to do a separate show. Come back maybe when the book comes out. But tell us about the book and the radio.
Well, the Riff Raff and Rock and Roll.
Riff Raff and
Rock
and Roll
is the title of the book. We have not published it yet, and we're going through a traditional publisher.
Okay.
And so you have to have an agent, and to get an agent, you have to write a book proposal, and the book proposal is harder to write than the actual book.
Yeah.
So in 2017, I started writing the book, and I had 144,000 words written, which is like almost 40,000 words too many for a memoir. So I had to go back and cut like a third of it out. Then we had to read other books and find out why our book should be on the shelf next to theirs. This goes into the book proposal, and it's enormous. We hired a literary consultant. Anyways, the story is about my life going through that period of time when I was not sober.
Right.
And I somehow documented a lot of that with either photography, writing things down, journaling it, answering machine tapes, cassettes itself, and videotapes. I had an enormous amount of stuff. And then I did these docs up here, which I, 1984, 1985, where I went through my whole year of what I was doing with this band I was managing back then. And so I had all this stuff, and I just sorted it all together. I wrote a book.
Right.
And so now we're just kind of getting through the final phases. I think the other one is trying to have a superior social media. You have to either be big on social media or you're not going to get anywhere. So I started releasing my photos on social media, trying to build up my following. I figured, I watermarked them as like, if they want to take a copy, it's like they're already being published anyways. So some of them aren't. I'm just trying to get it out there. So then they were going, well, you need to do a podcast. This is part of the proposal, by the way.
Yeah.
If I ever want to accomplish this, I have to do these things. So the other one was a podcast. I really didn't want to do a podcast. And then one day I just listened to Julie Devereaux on WRPS, and I'm like, wow, she is just having the best time, and I really enjoy her show. And I'm like, that's what I'll do. So I went over to Lisa and over there at WRPS and told her I wanted to do a show, and she was all for it. And I'm like 10 episodes into it right now, and I basically get to tell some stories about whatever I want and kind of keep it clean. And
play some music.
Play some music that's all related to it, and I'm having a great time doing that. And so it's just
the Rockland Public Radio.
Yeah, and it's walking distance to my house, and I listen to it all the time, anyways, because it's just alternative music.
When is the show on?
Oh, it's on Thursdays at 11 a.m. to noon.
Yeah.
And then it repeats Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. to noon.
Okay.
So,
and that's
it's just 1 hour, and I have a fun time with it.
Yeah.
88.3 FM. And it streams, so I get a lot of people that are out of this area that listen to it. And that's what I looked at, as opposed to doing a podcast, I'd have to go out and get a following, and it's such an uphill battle. I mean, I got so many other things that I've done and get involved in. It's just like doing a podcast was going to be really tough. I just didn't. I tried. I bought the microphones and tried to sit down and format it. And
Do you do it at home, or do you have to go to the studio?
I go to the studio, and in case I'm out of town, I do it at home, and then I submit it and have it on reserve. So, but
I've heard some great songs, and
I'm having a ball with it. I really, really am. And that's the other thing about doing radio, is that you can play music, and you don't have to. On a podcast, then you're starting to get into copyrights of music, and who ownership is, and are you allowed to play it and stuff like that. You can get in trouble sometimes, I think.
Awesome.
I don't know.
And remind folks where they can watch the watch the documentary.
Oh yeah! Don't forget about that's what we're here for, wasn't it? The documentary is on free on Roku television, and you just do the search for it, and easy enough. Remember, it's a documentary, not a documentary.
Yes.
And so that'll get you right to it. And they throw a couple commercials in there. It's
a great way to watch it. I watched it on Roku.
And then the other one is DVD. They have it available on DVD through Amazon. And I'm really happy with Skyrocket. They were the ones that put it out for us, distributors. And I met him through the film festivals. And that's when you take a film out there, you put in the festivals for a year, and they're a lot of fun to travel to and turn the movie on to different people. But one of the biggest moments was being in Boston and headlining at that film festival, the IFFB. And I was so excited because I've been trying to get in that film festival for almost like 12 years. As I made different films, it just never got in. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I got to figure out how to get into this film festival. So this is what I did. I showed up the year before. I volunteered. And so I'm a production guy, and I just want to, once I'm committed to do something, I'm in. And so I went to volunteer in the first, they give you 2 nights assignment. Here, you go, show up this day, you show up that night here at this time and this time. Well, I'm supposed to show up every night as far as I'm concerned. That's how I do it. So I showed up the first night, and they didn't know what to do with me. So they go watch the coats in the coat room, right? That was my job. So I sat there in the coat room, and a year later, well, actually, the end of the week, I was there every night, and finally the guy running the thing looks at me and goes, "Who are you, man? What is your gig? Because you're here every night, and now everyone's gone home, and they're packing up everything, and they're putting like the printers in the back of the cars for next year. They're just putting everything away, and I'm still there." And he's like, "What are you doing here? Everyone's long gone." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you asked, because I put together a film." So I get up there, and the following year, I get in, I walk in the door, and there's the rest of the volunteers. They all know me from the previous year. "Oh, Rudy, you made it. I heard your film's going to be in there." Awesome. So they were all excited for me. And then I got up on stage, I was presenting, and I said, "Well, I started in the coat room." So it was a big moment.
Well, it worked out.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, our time is drawing to a close. So
you're kidding?
Yeah, it's it's gone by quick, right? Right for us. I hope for everybody at home too.
It's going to be the 6-hour version of the gig show.
Well, we got a lot more we could talk about. We'll have to have Rudy back. Sometime we'll get into more. We'll talk about Henry Paul and Van Halen.
We'll do 90-minute episodes.
And 21 years of Folded Flag. We never ever mentioned that.
That's another.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Go ahead.
For Abington,
right? And it's a big.
Abington's hero was Richard Fitz,
right.
And I did that documentary about him a couple of years ago, working with his son, and that did also very well in the film festival circuit. So
is that available to see?
There are certain ways. I've been trying to get Richard to get it into distribution, and we're just kind of have a couple of stumbling blocks to get over, and we'll get there because Skyrocket's been after us, taking it into distribution for a long time.
People want to stay tuned, they can go to your website. You got rudychilds.com.
rudychilds.com.
And if you want to keep up with the Dogmatics,
Dogmatics, Dogmatics.com.
Dogmatics.com. Any appearances coming up that we know about yet?
Oh, well, they unfortunately couldn't be here today because they're doing the Somerville Porch Fest. But they do have the album release in Waltham, and that'll be on July 26th. Saturday night. There's going to be like 10 bands there. It's going to be an awesome time.
Do you know what time that starts?
Probably during the day. I don't think we've ironed out all the details. I'm working with Jerry on that now.
Okay.
Sure.
So, and you went to school with Jerry too, right? We did talk about that earlier.
Vicknell Junior High.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not sure. I have to ask him when he left or where he went, because I don't remember so much in high school. Afterwards, so I'm not sure what happened there. But kind of lost track. But anyway, but I remember when I see that Jerry, it reminds me of like yesterday. So anyway, thanks. once again, and I love the depiction of the music, and made me really a new fan, because I guess I wasn't listening as closely back in the time in all the songs. So they have new stuff. So I thought, what better way to close the show with one of their newer songs? Drop That Needle.
Drop That Needle.
Drop That Needle. So
hey, I produced that.
And you produced it. It's got your jukebox, in Rudy's garage is featured prominently in the video. So hey, thanks for tuning in to the Gig Show. Thanks to our guest Rudy Childs and the Dogmatics. So here is Drop That Needle by the Dogmatics. We'll see you next time on the Gig Show.
In Dorchester Bay, said drop that